Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer at Geek Vibes Nation. I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a Video Attic new release roundup. If you're new here, first of all, welcome. What we do here is really simple. We go back and forth talking about the latest home video releases, some mainstream, some obscure, a little bit in between. So I believe we're going to kick it off with you first today.
Yes, thank you. We have a 4K re-release that I'm very excited about. It's being newly released on Steelbook through Best Buy. This is from Lionsgate, and this is Warm Bodies, which let me show off this packaging real quick since that's the star of the show this time around. So you have back here, and then so you have this slip case. So his heart is cut out, and then you have them underneath. So you have this background, and then I'll take these discs out real quick, but you have two, luckily not stacked discs. You just have disc on each side, which I appreciate. And oops, okay, and you just kind of have the eyes underneath here. So
that's cool.
Yeah, at least it's not just like completely solid color, which is just a nice touch. So I previously had this one on Blu-ray. I had not upgraded to 4K yet, but it was nice to revisit this one. I hadn't seen it in a very long time. So for those who don't know, Warm Bodies, it's a pretty audience-friendly zombie movie that kind of focuses more on almost like a young adult romance, but they're not completely like teenage, like probably early 20s. And it's kind of like an offbeat take on a zombie film, and it takes the rare approach of showing a zombie outbreak from a zombie perspective. So you have Nicholas Hoult doing a really great performance as R. He's a zombie who he doesn't really remember who he was. He's pretty sure his name started with an R, so he calls himself R. And it's just kind of like that. These zombies have kind of like rudimentary memories, and kind of how it is explained is whenever they feed, they kind of feel alive again for a short time, and they kind of gain some of the people's memories that they are eating. So that's why they crave brains, because it kind of makes them feel alive again. And so that's kind of their driving motivation. So it's been a few years into this zombie outbreak. And on one like particular outing, he comes across like a group, and he's particularly drawn to this one young woman played by Teresa Palmer, who's very charming. And through in the process of eating her boyfriend's brains, which she does not know, he kind of gets even more infatuated with her because he gains his memories by eating his brain, and kind of becomes protective of her and makes sure that she doesn't get killed by the other zombies. So he kind of like helps her out, and they kind of like start like, you can kind of get like a remnants of like a Romeo and Juliet type love story, where they kind of like start to learn about one another, and like learn like what it is for him to be a zombie, and like just like kind of their likes and dislikes. So it's kind of like a nice romance mixed within this like kind of zombie outbreak. And it's not like, of course, if you're like a hardcore zombie fanatic, it's not like what you're typically thinking of with zombies. Are not like, they are still brutal, and there's brutality in this, but it's like there's also some sweetness, and there is still some humanity lingering within them. So this particular movie, it has like a lot of charm, a lot of romance, some thrilling moments, and I think it does like a tonal balance pretty nicely. If you are a sucker for more of like a love story, this is a pretty good one with a genre bent. If you're just like here for like zombie carnage, you might not like be completely satisfied with the movie. It is PG-13. It is more so like a comedy, kind of like more in the vein of like Shaun of the Dead, except they are still alive in that movie. But it's just kind of like in that kind of like winking take on the zombie genre. I just talked about the remake of Dawn of the Dead like a few weeks ago on this show. That's way more serious. It's way more of a traditional take on the zombie genre. This is a little something different. This is like more like heartfelt, funny, but it is like it doesn't completely ignore zombies as like an entity. There are still like consequences to there being zombies in this world, which I do like. So it's a really charming movie. I really recommend it. It is, if you have like maybe like someone who is like more skittish around the horror genre, maybe this would be like a good kind of like stepping stone where you get some of that genre elements, but then like you still have kind of like the comedy and like the romance and stuff. So overall, really enjoyed revisiting this movie. This 4K, it's the same one that the disc wise that came out, I believe, in 2017 from Lionsgate. Just new new steelbook packaging, but it's a really, really solid disc. This has Dolby Vision, and an upgrade from the Blu-ray also is a upgrade to Dolby Atmos audio, and the Dolby Atmos sounds really nice. The picture's really good. A lot of the early Lionsgate like 4K discs could kind of seem a little like had little imperfections here and there. Like I know like the original Kick-Ass one had like some odd like grain and color stuff with it. I didn't really see any issues with the Warm Bodies 4K. It looks really nice. It is an upgrade from the Blu-ray. And there's like some that includes all the legacy special features. So there's audio commentaries. There's like a really nice array of featurettes, deleted scenes, all that type of stuff. So if you're a fan and you don't already own this on 4K, like why not go to Best Buy and get a nice steelbook? If you already own the 4K, obviously this is just for the steelbook fanatics, but I did not have this on 4K, so I am glad to finally have it on 4K and have that jump in quality. I think the movie is worth it. But yeah, so this is exclusively at Best Buy if you're interested, and this is a pretty nice quality steelbook.
Nice. Yeah, that one I have not seen, so this might be a good push for me to finally check that out.
Yeah.
So my first title is something that I actually was like a cool discovery for me, and that is Requiem for a Heavyweight.
Oh, cool.
And this is from Mill Creek. It's one of the rare times that like Mill Creek has put out like a really nicely packaged older film. So so as you can see, this looks slightly different than the slipcover, which is cool. And this also has, let me pop the disc out. You were talking about interior art. It has, I don't know how well you can see that, but yeah. So shame on me. I've never even heard of this film, and it had 1962 not been such a stellar year for like movies, I feel like this would have been nominated for some Oscars. So this is a harrowing and heartbreaking film about a washed up boxer, played extremely well by Anthony Quinn, in what I feel like is, in my opinion, maybe among his best roles. Quinn plays this gentle giant who is forced to retire as doctors say one more fight could literally kill him. So in order to find more work, he goes to an employment agency. There he meets a really nice woman. I can't think of her character's name, but she's played by Julie Harris, who horror fans might remember for The Haunting. She's been in like a number of things, but that's kind of what I best remember her for. So she tries to kind of like help him find a new career path, maybe mentoring kids, and his shady manager is kind of like working against that. And the manager's played by Jackie Gleason, who, oh my God, is so good in this. Have you seen this one?
I have not. I'm really interested though.
Yeah, Jackie Gleason, like it's not to diminish his comedy work. Like he, I mean, doing comedy well is an art form, but like seeing him like do a dramatic role and just Oh my gosh, it's so good. And I have to say, like, I don't normally like Mickey Rooney, if I'm being honest, but I think he's really good in this as well. So, um, yeah, criminally underrated. Wow, my voice just changed there. Um, and yeah, so it's great. This movie really has this kind of dark noir style that I thought was interesting. It's not a film noir, but it has definitely that like grimy, seedy underworld. Like it really captures like the dark nooks and crannies of the city in a way that like is really interesting and visually just well, interesting. So the DP was Arthur Ornitz. I hope I'm saying that right. He shot really well-known films like Death Wish, which I covered the 4K a little while ago, Serpico and The Boys in the Band, and many other great films. Also, this has a cameo by Muhammad Ali at the very beginning.
Oh,
Not playing himself, playing a different boxer, but it's like literally he's on the screen for like 2 minutes, maybe not even like 2 minutes, but it's pretty cool. It's like,
mhm.
wow, like I had to look it up just to make sure like that was him, but yeah, so that's pretty cool. So as far as like the restoration goes, I think this is overall really nicely done. It's not perfect, but I believe this was probably sourced out from a so this is Columbia. So
Yes.
I think it's probably safe to say like this was maybe sourced from their restoration. You still do get like some scratches, a little bit of like wear and tear, but it overall looks really nice. You can tell that there has been a lot of like nice restoration done. Again, visually this movie's stunning looking, so it was really nice to have it in a really nice, crisp, clean looking presentation. Like it's black and white, which is very moody, but sort of like how I talk with like Warner Archive, they do a really nice job of like doing a nice balance between the black and the white and like the contrast, which really gives you like again a really crisp, clear picture. So yeah, it's great. I feel so bad that I've slept on this for so long, but it is, yeah, I just can't say enough great things about it. And yeah, so there's another look at the back. Unfortunately, we don't have any extras. I really wish there would have been like a historical commentary track.
Mhm.
I feel like that probably would have been really interesting to give a lot of context, but within the time period and the world of boxing. But yeah, but I mean the price is right, so I highly recommend it.
Yeah, that one wasn't on my radar at all, but now I am very interested, especially since I do like Anthony Quinn pretty well and some of the other performers you mentioned. So definitely going to add that to the list for sure. Moving on to my next title, I want to give a shout out to a recent episode we recorded, our Valentine's Day anti-romance episode, because this next title has a lot of ties to that one. So anyone who's been following along, they'll see some reprisals here. So I am going for the new Kino Classics release, Francois Truffaut's The Story of Adele H. And why this is notable is because on that episode, I talked about Truffaut's Mississippi Mermaid. And so this is from that same batch of releases, but also Andre, our great editor of our videos, he talked about Possession starring Isabella Johnny, and this stars Isabella Johnny as well. So I was like, ooh, that's cool. Like talking about like her crazy ass performance in that movie. So I got to like this very next week watching Isabella Johnny movie. So that was exciting. So here's without the slipcase, same thing, just your standard Kino disc in here. So I was very intrigued to check this one out. So like I just watched that other Truffaut, and this one I wasn't sure what to expect. I'd heard that it was a little bit different from some of his work, and I can definitely see that. This is more so, it's more, I would say, gentle than some of his films, but it's definitely not heartfelt by any stretch of the imagination. It's more of a historical drama. It's based on a real life story of Adele H, this woman who travels to French Canada, Nova Scotia, and like a specific island, I believe. And this is basically, this also would have fit on the anti-romance episode, because this is a tale of obsessive love gone wrong. This is basically a woman who she's like has it in her head that she's in love with this officer who is stationed in we'll say Nova Scotia, and decides that she is going to follow him there, thinking like, oh, we're going to get married and stuff. But he basically has no interest in her, and she kind of like starts just like showing up places and trying to like she's kind of like deluding herself and trying to like convince him like, no, I really like, I love you, I know you love me, like it's okay if you want to be with other women, I just want to be your wife, like that type of stuff. And just like lying to her parents about like, oh yeah, like we're engaged and we're going to get married, and just kind of like how this kind of like spins out of control, just like, okay. And then her parents announces the engagement, then the guy's like, what the hell, and it like gets him in trouble with like his like superiors in the army and stuff. So it's kind of like this really crazy obsessive love of like just her so in her head, so like believing that she's in love with this guy who's like was a friend of her family, was like I believe like had a like a relationship with her sister who had like drowned some time ago. So she does know this guy, but he has like no interest in her romantically outside of like hooking up occasionally, which sends her mixed signals. And so it's kind of like a tragedy. And there's a really interesting element of this. I don't want to spoil it for those who do check it out. In this movie, because it is based on a real life person, she is the daughter of a very famous poet, but I don't want to name it because whenever I heard who it was, I was like, oh, that's okay. This is like, I know who this is and stuff. And so I was like, oh, this is their daughter and like their experiences. And just like throughout the film, she is like writing letters to him. And I'm just like, oh, that's so crazy that there's this connection. So I almost viewed it as kind of a twist of not knowing this. But if you do look it up, you can understand what the H stands for in this. But I thought that was a cool like layer of it. I was like, oh, okay. It gives me a little bit more context of like who this is, how they relate to the world, and everything else. So this is not the most uplifting film. It is a tragedy. It is obsessive love gone wrong, but it is really well done. Out of the Truffaut stuff I've seen, I would put this more towards the bottom, but that's just because most of his stuff is at a pretty good level of quality. I think you are going to be talking about a Truffaut collection here in a couple of weeks. Whenever I know that's a pretty decent one you have to get through. There's several things in there. But so we'll be talking more Truffaut more in the coming weeks. But this is a really good one. Really good performances from everyone involved, including Isabelle Adjani. And it's just like really gorgeously mounted. It's not overly long either. It's only 96 minutes. So like some like historical dramas can like really stretch things out. This kind of kept it more contained. And I never really lost interest, which is good.
Nice.
Regarding this Blu-ray, I at first, whenever I was looking up and trying to research this title, I did not see where it had been released on Blu-ray before. But then I got curious because there's an audio commentary from film historians Julie Kurgo and Nick Redman, which was the same for Mississippi Mermaid. So I did some digging, and even though it wasn't listed in the normal databases I checked, it has been released on Blu-ray previously through Twilight Time, which was their label. That's long out of print, and like I said, I barely knew it even existed, but it has been re-released so people can check this out again. So I did not own it before. Now I own it. This is not a new master from what I can tell. It's probably the same master that was used for Twilight Time. You have the audio commentary and some trailers. So pretty much I would think it's almost like an exact port of the Twilight Time disc, say for like putting Kino branding and like maybe some small variances in like the quality of the transfer. I would say that it's like a very solid older master. It sounds good. It looks pretty solid. No crazy variances and like aesthetics, and you get this slipcover, which if you order early, you get that too. So the main thing is it's back in print, so that's good. And from what I can tell, this is far superior cover art. I really like this cover art. It's very moody and like stylish, so that's also a win for me. So if you're a true Faux fan, it's back in print, and it's a pretty good quality at a decent price. So I recommend it. Story of Adele H.
Nice. I will definitely have to check that out. And like you said, I will be getting into some more Truffaut, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
So my next title is it doesn't really relate to my previous title, but it kind of does because again, the cinematography is just amazing, and that is Let's Hope It's a Girl. And here's the back. So yeah, not really unfortunately no extras, just regular interior. So yeah, this is a really interesting movie. This is another one that like I had never even heard of before, but it's a really interesting drama, comedy about different generations of women. And basically it's like a series of events that show that these women can kind of kick ass in business, in life, in love, not have to be sort of subjugated to men. And that was definitely pretty rare of a take to have, especially in like the early 80s when this film was made. So yeah, I have to say, like, one of the things that really just struck me about this movie was the way the small Italian countryside is filmed. It just has such a lush, inviting, charming, authentic feel. Like there's just like moments in the home that are like, it just feels like, you know, a documentary. It just feels like you're like with this family and everything feels so homey, and like you're kind of a part of that unit. So yeah, that's all great. This has a really nice balance of humor, but it also has a lot of really good emotional stakes and a lot of little slices of life that I think tie everything together really nicely. So this movie is 2 hours long. I wouldn't like, I would say I was never like bored with it, but I do feel like this movie could be like maybe trimmed a little bit. But yeah, there's great performances. There's a lot of like interesting twists that I don't want to get into, but you kind of think it's going one way and then something sort of throws a wrench into that plan and then it goes somewhere else. So it constantly kind of kept me on my feet, which I really like. So yeah, this definitely was an interesting one. So it looks really good. I had never obviously seen this before, so I can't really compare it, but like looks really beautiful, especially with like the Italian countryside. You know, all of that looks just like beautiful and detailed, and like again the cinematography is fantastic, and I feel like this Blu-ray presentation like highlights that. Like nothing in the way of like artifacts or any wear and tear. So I mean, it looks like, you know, you tend to get that sometimes even with like movies from the early 80s if like the elements aren't well taken care of. But this is really impressive. I think that they did a really nice job of like restoring this film to you know, its splendor. So yeah, this is definitely one of those that I love highlighting, like just like with Requiem for a Heavyweight, like stuff that might not be on everybody's radar, but yeah, I really like this. This was a really interesting film. So wish there had been some extras, but I'm just happy to own it. So
Yeah, that seems very much my type of film, so I'm very excited to check that one out. So I'm glad to hear that overall you were fairly impressed by it, even if it might have been just a slightly long.
yeah,
So,
and that's, I mean, again, and I was never bored, so that's,
mhm.
you know, that's saying something.
Awesome, can't wait. So from one rare video title to another, I'm going for 1962's A Violent Life.
Hmm.
So this is a French movie, I believe. Nope, Italian. Sorry. I've been watching a lot of different French movies, so I just had French on the brain. So this one's pretty cool because it comes with a nice booklet, which kind of gives you some extra context for this movie. Which so you have the back here and like a nice essay in here, which did help me appreciate the movie a little bit more. I gotta admit, I still don't love it, but overall, pretty good. This is based on a novel by Pasolini, whose work is highly controversial a lot of the times. But so this film, like I said, it's from 1962. This actually reminds me a lot of a title that you recently discussed and I watched this week as well, like Scent of the Night, which involves a criminal doing just like really bad things throughout the film and just like potentially getting what's coming to him. So that type of situation. This goes even further back in production wise. And it also has kind of remnants of like a Clockwork Orange without like the deep like psychological plumbing. But so this is basically it's a black and white film. It's about a group of like hooligans who are just like going around and constantly like fucking shit up, just like robbing people. Like some people are like sexually assaulting and like just like stealing stuff, just all violence, sexual depravity, all that kind of stuff. So it's just this story centers mainly on like one particular member of this group and kind of his journey through like going to prison and then like getting out and like his like experiences with this girl that he kind of meets and like on the street during like one day where he's like not being as aggressive necessarily but still kind of being like a little bit of a weirdo, but he like gets involved with this girl who find him a little bit charming, and but from there I don't really have like believability in this relationship because on their first, just to give like context as to like why I didn't like this movie sometimes, like they put so much stakes in this relationship, but on like the first date, he takes this girl to a movie theater and like constantly like tries to like drag her hand to his crotch so she can like do stuff and like so it's kind of like he's like no like it's fine, like you don't like I'm not gonna want you to do like I just want you to just do a little bit like and stuff, and she's like no I don't want to do this, I want to watch the movie. But like there's still like more interactions after that. She doesn't like cut ties with him, and it's just like there's a lot of that going on, like even like after he like goes to jail and then gets out and like him trying to reconnect with her, like his possession over her is just wild, and like it really like drove me up a wall. I was just like, you do not deserve this lady. She like I do not know what she sees in you. I don't it really bothered me. But there are elements that I like of this, and like I said, reading about it did help me appreciate a little bit more. I just personally have more of an issue with like bad people just being like sick and sadistic and not like, even if there is some sort of like comeuppance, it's not always the most satisfying. I will not say if there's comeuppance here or not. We recently talked about this in like a special Cohen video episode with Going Places. It was kind of the same thing. So sometimes it's more interestingly done than the other. Bless you. But overall, the lead was not charismatic enough for me to like get invested in his like being like, okay, he's charismatic, but he's also like an asshole. He is more so kind of like a little bit bland and also an asshole, which doesn't make very captivating cinema for me. I'm not like a prude or anything, but it's just kind of like there wasn't a lot of dramatic like intrigue for me. Like it just kind of seemed like a series of like horrible people doing horrible things and then it ends. So overall, not my favorite movie, but it's not terrible, and there's going to be obviously an audience for this. It's directed really well, and it has like a nice visual style. Just like everything else didn't really hit for me. The transfer is really nice. I did like it quite a bit. I don't know what, like, if it's like a 2K or 4K scan, but overall, there's not really a lot of nicks or scratches, which is nice. And this does include interviews with like the director and the different film historians. So you do have a few interviews on there, which is pretty cool. So Rare Video has put out A Violent Life. If you are not put off by terrible people doing terrible things, maybe try it out. If you also aren't really a fan of it, keep on walking, because this, like, they're pretty awful.
Yeah, that one sounds like something I probably will skip.
Okay.
But sounds like a good, at least sounds like a good presentation overall, though.
For sure.
So my next one is again another one that I had never really even like heard of, but sounded really interesting, and that is Congress Dances. And it's a little bit confusing because it's actually talking about the Vienna Congress, not like our like Congress.
Okay.
So but this movie is really interesting because it's like a like precursor to a lot of things, which I'll get into. But so I know you also like a lot of like rom-coms, classic rom-coms. This is definitely one of those films that I feel like sort of set the template for a lot of that stuff. So this is a lavish comedy that's set in Vienna, and it's basically like if you think of something like Ernst Lubitsch, like this very much is like in that kind of similar vein. And it sort of revolves around pretty familiar like screwball comedy tropes, which includes like mistaken identity, satire on class system, and how mistaken identity kind of relates to said class. So all of those things are like kind of neatly folded into this like comedy, very farcical, also a musical for a little bit. But yeah, I will say that it's like if you really don't understand the time and culture, it can be a little daunting sometimes to kind of like get what's going on. I will say like this is where the commentary track really helps to put a lot of that stuff into like the proper context. But you know, even without that, it's pretty fun. It's very charming. Like with a lot of like early like German films, the camera work is very inventive. Really great musical numbers, pretty interesting dancing going on, because you know we got dance in the title, so there is definitely that. And so like I said, there is a audio commentary track, which is I think really good. There is no like booklet or anything. It would have been nice had there been like maybe a little bit more on the disc, but I'm, you know, pretty appreciative of like a historical commentary track because out of my bunch, this is like the only one that's has a commentary track so far. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a fun movie. Like I said, if you're not really into screwball comedies or like classic rom-coms, and you maybe find the cultural things a little daunting, it might not work for you. But I think like I could see you really liking it, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that one out because it sounds like you're speaking my language. So I'm still gonna keep my expectations in check, but that one seems very promising for me.
Yep.
Moving on to my next title. So I have a very, very indie movie, and I'll explain in a little bit. This is from Bayview Entertainment, and this is Northern Shade. And this is from the same company I talked about. This was quite a while ago, like maybe back in August. This movie called The Enormity of Life, which came out on a burned Blu-ray disc, and this is the same. So this is a burned Blu-ray disc, but so you have like the
Hmm.
burned Blu-ray disc quality, but it doesn't actually impact the like audio visual quality. That is actually pretty strong, and I'll expand more upon that. It's more so just like the potential for like maybe it not lasting as long in future years, but usually they have like at least a pretty decent quality. So Northern Shade, I just want to give this context really quick. So I love indie movies, but sometimes I'm suspicious of like movies that are like so indie that they didn't even get like a decently sized independent distributor to distribute them. Like I reviewed a horror film last week on our episode that I really did not like, and I could tell that like the like everything about it was just pretty poor and everything. So like I had kind of my guard up going into this one because like Bayview, as much as like I'm glad they're sending me stuff, they put out some pretty decent stuff. I was still kind of like, I don't know about this. But actually I really did like this. I wouldn't say it's like a great movie, but it's very solid, and like that's compared to my expectations, that's like the best as I could hope for. So this is a it was shot during the pandemic because there are some of those COVID like elements where like people are wearing masks or like when they're out and all that stuff, and like vague like references to COVID and all that stuff. But they don't linger on that too much. Basically, what this is it's a tale of a veteran who's like suffering from PTSD whenever he was over in the war. Well, like one of his like best friends got killed right beside him, and like as he was like showing him like pictures of his family, so it just really like fucked him up, and so he's just kind of like been living on his houseboat for like 7 years, is really kind of like not really connecting with anyone, so he just kind of closed himself off on this houseboat. And then until one day um a private investigator shows up who like learns that like this truck that's been registered in his name was found like torched, and he reveals that it was belonged to his brother who he hasn't talked to in a long time. And so this kind of leads to like him like figuring out that his brother is like potentially missing and last known to be involved in this like militia that's been like preparing in the woods, just like militias do. They're like kind of like in their own little world, imagining scenarios where they're going to save the country. So this is basically him like getting out of like off his houseboat and starting to investigate what happened to his brother, and like whether he's still alive, if he is, whether he can be like saved from this militia and all that kind of stuff. So this has the potential to be very cringeworthy, like a like acting, or like maybe like even like pro like very like jingoistic language of just like pro America, all that type of stuff. It's kind of like it doesn't do any of that, thankfully. This is more so just like a more character based drama. The acting's surprisingly good. There's a few moments here and there where I'm like, oh, I can tell they're not like professional, but like for like amateur actors, they're doing really good work that really never really like snapped me out of the experience. The like the cinematography and everything, it's very standard, but it's like done well enough. Like it's capably captured. The audio is like on point. It's just like a very solid drama, and like even like the ending, like as we get to the ending, it all comes together in a very natural way that's like satisfying. It's not overly like emotionally manipulative. And I don't know, I just, compared to where my expectations were, this was like such a breath of fresh air. I was just like, okay, great, I'm glad this like was not bad. I'm just so grateful. So this particular disc, like I said, it is a burned Blu-ray, but the high definition like video looks really nice. There's not like a lot of like compression issues or any of that. Just really nice, solid colors. Even though black levels are pretty solid, there's like a little bit of crush here and there, but that's to be expected. And then the audio is really good. I believe it's like a LPCM 5.1, if I'm not mistaken. So like looks good, sounds good. It actually does include a few special features. There's like a dedication to like a person who on the crew who had contributed, like the houseboat that the person lives on had passed away, so it's a tribute to them. There's like a selection of like film slates, so just like them like slating the films, like just like a loop of that, and then like 2 deleted scenes. So it's like it could have been nothing, but they added some like effort to this, which is cool. So overall, the last time I talked about a debut title, it wasn't the most positive, but this one, it's positive. Good job. So like, wasn't expecting much, but like Northern Shade, it's good if you want like a really good, well done indie movie. So
Nice.
good job.
Nice. So my next title is also like a thriller, but it's definitely more of a well-known, bigger budget thriller, and that is Marathon Man from Kino Studio Classics. And then this is their 4K and Blu-ray, so there's a slipcover. We do have a nice array of features, and inside. So yeah, it has been a while since I've seen this, so this was really nice to go back and rewatch this. Have you seen this?
I have not. It's been like high on my list for a long time, and I keep seeing people make like specific references in the comment sections of every time this is posted about somewhere. So I need to watch it just for
like,
those.
Is it safe?
Yes, that's it. Every time it's like, is it safe? I'm like, I know this is from the movie. I just don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's great. So this is a this is a Robert Evans produced movie coming off of hits like Love Story and The Godfather. And really, this was like when Evans was kind of on a roll, like producing hit after hit. This is maybe one of the best thrillers of the 70s. As with most of the movies of its time, it's very deeply cynical. This is very much a thriller that's a product of a Nixon era America. And and it does sort of engage in sort of like politics and again, it's like, I don't want to give too much away, but it has like double crosses, Nazis, Jules. It kind of has it all. And
Jules.
Yep. I mean, it's got everything you would want. And yeah, Dustin Hoffman kind of plays this like hapless hero, in the vein of like, this is very much a Hitchcock homage, like Dustin Hoffman is kind of the wrong man. He gets swept up into this thing only because his brother is involved. And when you find out, like, I don't want to give it away, but when you find out like why this was all set into motion, it's like one of the most like skin crawling, because it's so like simple yet so like messed up. And that's all I'll say. But Laurence Olivier is great. This is a weird opinion, but I never really thought Laurence Olivier was like that great. I know. Like, I don't think he's like by far not an awful actor, but like I just think he's sort of overrated. But he's really good in this. Again, everybody is just clicking so well together. This is, of course, a new 4K master. It looks great. It's interesting because I think this is just by virtue of how it was filmed. Like, looking at it, it was very like grain heavy, and it's not so much where it's like distracting though. I mean, it still looks really nice. This utilizes a lot of like really nice like exterior shots that you can kind of tell looks a little bit better with like the uptick in brightness and color. Like, it's just weird because, like I said, it's just, I'm used to like seeing 4Ks that are completely like almost like scrubbed of grain. But it does have that nice film looking like film like quality to it as well. It's just it's a little bit heavy at times, but I don't think that's necessarily a fault of Kino. I just think that's maybe by virtue of like how it was filmed, and some like the lenses and stuff. But yeah, it's great. This has a new commentary track that's really nice. It has some archival features that were ported over. Um, yeah, it's a fantastic film. Once again, Kino did a nice job of packing it with extras. It looks great. I mean, this has a finale that it's almost like such a great set piece in just how simple it is. It's a little like the French Connection where it just builds this beautiful kind of crescendo. So it's great. You haven't seen it, but this is definitely the time to see it now. It's it's a really stellar release.
Yeah, I will seize this opportunity to finally check it out. You mentioned the finale or certain revelations being skin crawly. Something skin crawly to me would be all the grain scrubbed from things. So I'm glad that this is grain heavy. I'm very happy about that. I also wanted to note that you were talking about Robert Evans. If anyone is interested in learning more about Robert Evans, Kino Classics also put out this great documentary about him called "The Kid Stays in the Picture." They put that on Blu-ray a couple years ago, and I reviewed it for the site. So I guess we can link to that as well. But that's a really great documentary on like his legacy at Paramount and beyond. Really great documentary.
Yeah, he was, I mean, really like Hitmaker is like not even like feel like is an understatement. Like I would probably wager to bet Paramount would not be there if it had not been for Robert Evans.
Yeah, he definitely pulled them out of a slump. So good on him. So moving on to my next title, this is a new release from IFC Films. This is Vesper. So I'm going to do back-to-back films you'll see about like the collapse of society. It's a popular theme in recent years. I don't know why. So yeah, this is kind of set in like in the aftermath of more of like an ecological collapse, where it is that thing of where like there's like kind of like an interior hierarchy of like people who are doing well. They are like kind of controlling everything and just like controlling the flow of like food and different like resources to like kind of outer portions of like society, which is where our main characters reside. He is a young boy. This is like advanced enough to have like kind of like kind of like drone companions and stuff, but like it's still kind of like a almost like a wasteland. So it's kind of like that like mixture of like future, but like also collapse, which is done really nicely, especially on this level of budget. Like this isn't like a huge budget movie, but they use their special effects budget very well. Basically, this is about a young boy who like one day comes across a young woman who is like attempting what I don't want to say. She claims that she is like trying to get back to the city, I believe. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but so she's a young woman, and it's just kind of like the story of them learning about one another, figuring out like kind of what is exactly like going on with all kind of the hierarchy of leaderships and like how they are being oppressed, and just kind of like that natural like us versus them, lower class versus higher class kind of push and pull, but more on a personal level. Like it never really even shows like the interior of the city. It's just kind of like spoken about, and like you see it like in far off lands. It's mostly about like this journey within like kind of like this smaller outset of the society. And it's pretty entertaining. One person to note, which I think will be of like note to you, and probably at least Andre, who edits this, and others as well, horror fans. This co-star is Richard Brake, which is pretty cool. He plays the boy's father. And there's a lot of really other great uh, uh, performers like Eddie Marson, who from like people might know from like The Gentleman. He's going to be in this. He's in the Sundance movie that's going to come out in Netflix later this year called Fair Play. He has a really good role in that. But he's really good in this too. It's kind of like a smaller leader within the like this community who's like communicating with the outs like the more powerful people. So he kind of has like a complex of like he has power, but within like this ruinous society. Overall, I think this is a really strong sci-fi tale. I think it tackles the themes of like what happens like whenever a society collapses and all the resources go more towards one side than the other rather than being equally dispersed, how technology is used, all that type of stuff. It's very interesting. Really enjoyed it. This Blu-ray presentation is really nice. I like the picture. The audio is really powerful. I'm pretty sure overseas there's a 4K release. So those who are who are not averse to imports, look for the 4K if you're interested. I just have not. I'm not that dedicated yet, but I did like this movie, so maybe I'll look into it. And this also does have some special features as well. There's like 3 or 4 brief featurettes with like the cast reflecting on like the characters and the themes and all that type of stuff. Brief featurettes, but they are there. So overall, recommended if you're a sci-fi film. Pretty solid. I enjoyed it. Vesper.
Nice. Yeah, another one that was not on my radar, but I definitely should check out because it sounds pretty cool. So my next one actually, so my next 2 films are actually from a box set. So I'm gonna do a formal unboxing video, but I'm just gonna show the packaging. This is from Severin. This is their Umberto Lenzi like box set with him with Tomas Milian. I don't know. But hopefully I'm saying that right. But yeah, it's a pretty nice box set. I mean, it's very stacked. So I'm doing the first 2 films so far, and I'm gonna work my way through the next couple weeks. But this one was really exciting because this is kind of considered like the masterpiece of this particular genre, which is like the polizia crime kind of movies. And this starts out with Almost Human, and then this is the first pairing of Lenzi and this actor Tomas. So here's the back. It's definitely stacked with a lot of great features. You do get a little card there, and that will give you an idea of like kind of what you have to look forward to, or maybe not.
Yeah.
So that's the soundtrack. So soundtrack and the disc. Yeah, phenomenal movie, but I definitely feel like you would probably skip this one because it definitely is a movie where just awful people do awful things to each other. I mean, I don't want to spoil it, there is definitely comeuppance, but yeah, it is very sick, it is very sleazy. There's really no boundaries. Like the actor Tomas Milian is like just one of the most vile people like imaginable. He kills women, children, anybody is like fair game. But it really does feel like an unhinged experience, and there is a really solid kind of cat and mouse game with him and the police. And the soundtrack is great. And it's not as gory as like a Fulci film, but it definitely kind of has that, like Fulci had a penchant for just being completely like no morals with like anything he presents. Which, you know, I mean, I think that's a feature of the film. Like it's very daring, it's very bold. um it's definitely not for everybody. Like I said, it's not super gory, but it is nicely paced. It has a lot of great action. Surprisingly, the second outing between Lenzi and Tomas was like the one I actually preferred out of these two, but this was great. Like these commentary tracks are amazing. Like Severin always does a fantastic job with extras. Like I will say, like I've never been let down by anything they've put out. It looks great. Surprisingly, like not a lot of like wear and tear for an older film. Especially like I think this was like 74. So that's really impressive. Like the colors really pop. It's not pristine, but it does really look like a nice visual presentation, and with the audio as well. So yeah, Severin did a bang up job. Again, you get all this like all these extras. Yeah, it's starting to be like a really stellar box set. And I'm excited to talk about the next one whenever it's my turn, because I think, like I said, I think I like that a little bit more.
Ooh, interesting. I really love that genre. So now I'm conflicted because you say maybe I will hate this movie, but I also really like that genre. So I'll have to think on this. We'll see what you say with the second one. Maybe it'll sway me. Moving to my next title, this is through Good Deed Entertainment and Kino Lorber. This is Ashgrove. This is a new movie, which I was very intrigued to check out because I like the premise. Because I was like, what does that mean? So the log line, I'll read it to you. When a troubled couple escapes to their rural farmhouse for a weekend of reconnection, they realize that their ability to save their marriage will literally determine the fate of humankind itself. I was like, whoa, I'm here for it. I didn't know, like, there's something about this premise. I was like, is it going to go in some kind of crazy, like, Mother-esque thing where it's like them, like, secluded at a cabin, but like weird, like almost supernatural stuff is going on? Not exactly, but I still did like it. So this movie, like I said, this is kind of going hand in hand with the collapse of society type of thing, and it almost hits a little bit too close to home with what is going on right now in Ohio. But so in this world, there's been like a virus that is kind of like gotten into the water. So their water supply, like people are only basically able to drink like a very small amount of water each day, and they have to kind of keep track of how much water they are like intaking, so they don't get like poisoned and all that stuff. So it's kind of like it's a virus that it's like slowly killing off society. And this woman happens to be a scientist who could be the person who is like on the verge of like figuring out how they are going to reverse this and kind of like make sure that humanity doesn't die. But she is also slightly has like some mental issues and is known prone to blackouts whenever she gets like especially stressed or like crazed or whatever. Like whenever there's a high amount of stress, she sometimes experiences blackouts. So after experiencing this blackout at the beginning of the movie, she is encouraged to go off with her husband to this cabin where she can kind of like take a week of relaxation, even though she is very reluctant because she knows that her work is so important and she needs to like get this done and everything. So leaving that behind for a little bit, once these two get to the cabin, it is a lot of like there's a little bit of resentment from her like working overtime basically and like not spending a lot of time with her husband because she's trying to save the world. But then there's like a little bit of resentment. So there's little snipes here and there. And it turns into like you almost kind of forget about this larger context and just like it turns into more of a relationship drama in a microcosm. And they're kind of like, it's almost like they're rediscovering one another after not having been like in each other's lives that much over the past like few months or even years. So they're learning more about each other and like what they've been up to, and like it kind of like uh it gets uncomfortable at times with like some of the marital spats, and there's jealousy that's kind of like intruded upon or like introduced into this relationship whenever like an outside couple who she actually works with comes to like dinner with them, and just kind of how they're all the dynamics between these characters evolve. And this does end up, it's not as straightforward as it looks. There is more of a heightened element that I will not reveal, but there are some twists and turns within this one that are really interesting. Overall, I would say I really did like if you are into kind of more straightforward marital dramas that kind of like are like a two-hander of like back and forth. This is a really solid example of it. And but what I did not know, this does have special features. This leads me into that. I was watching the special features and I had no idea. Basically, how they filmed this movie is the main actress, her name is Amanda Brugel. Um, the filmmakers, they filmed this pretty much entirely improvised. So they had like a brief rough outline of what they wanted to accomplish, but all the actors kind of pretty much made up their dialogue in service of like where they knew the story was going. Except Amanda, the lead actress, she did not know what the movie was actually going to be. Like pretty much like from scene to scene, she was confronted with different like scenarios, and she kind of had to like stay in the moment and interact with it. So she had no idea what the movie was ultimately going to be. Everyone else in the scene, like all the other actors, knew where the film was going to end up. She did not know that. So that kind of, it's very interesting because there's a whole like 16-minute featurette devoted to them talking about this process, how they filmed with her, how they were wondering if it was even going to work, because this was going to be like a more experimental take on filming a performance, and like whether she would like react well in the moment, or whether she'd resent them for like where like, the story eventually goes. So it's very fascinating. And then thinking back on it, like to her performance is really great and it's very natural. But I guess that's because she really did not know what was going on, and any outside elements were completely new to her. And it was kind of like it was a mixture of her being in character, but also reacting to this new information. Like, oh, this is what this movie is, and like it's very fascinating. So it makes me want to go back and rewatch this movie to kind of catch up on some of those subtle nuances that I may have not like noticed from knowing that this was a pretty much entirely improvised movie with the actress not knowing what was going on. There's also a couple other featurettes that kind of like detail the production of the movie. But overall, like this is a pretty solid movie. The audio and visual is very strong, as strong as you would want a new movie. And yeah, it's entertaining. So Ashgrove, it wasn't what I expected, but it is still pretty solid, and I'm very intrigued to revisit it.
Nice. Yeah, so my next one, I kind of hinted at this already, where I actually like this a little bit more than the last feature from this box set, and that is Syndicate Sadists. And this actually seems like the more maybe brutal of the two, but actually I don't think it is. So again, we have a nice array of features. This also does include the soundtrack here, and this comes with this little card, and then the like the title tracks. So yeah, this one was like really interesting. And I feel like I have other movies to go on this set, so I don't know, but I feel like so far, I feel like this utilizes the lead actor's charisma the most. He, like Tomas this time plays like kind of a rebel, like street guy, but he's like ultimately like a really good guy. His brother is a cop, and his brother's like trying to like recruit him into it's almost like a private policing of like the wealth, like keeping the wealthy protected, which is kind of weird, and they never really they never really go into those implications, but I thought that was interesting. So Tomas is like, no, I'm too much of a badass to like do that. But so his brother ends up getting killed while so his brother kind of goes off on this like one man mission to find this kidnapped child, and it ends up getting him killed. And this sort of like puts into action everything that kind of happens. So this guy's name, this character's name is Rambo, actually, and he's
Of
got a
course.
pretty sweet motorcycle. I have to say, there's a scene where like there's like this giant U-Haul or like a tractor trailer, and like he like just drives his motorcycle right from like outside of it into the street, and it's
Yes.
amazing. And
Yes.
yeah, it's fun over the top. I really feel like this actor kind of uses his charm to really elevate what I think is probably like a C-level action film into like an all-time banger. Like it really, like he sells as fun and adventure, and like just like the way he kind of pits these crime families against each other to ultimately like find this kidnapped kid is pretty interesting. And Joseph Cotton makes a appearance in this as like a crime boss who is blind but tries to hide that fact. And like he's good in this. It's interesting because they don't actually have him dubbed, they just like let him speak in English. So yeah, it's great. It's well directed. The action is nearly nonstop. And surprisingly, there's some really decent emotional stakes, which I think help anchor the film. So I really appreciated that. Again, as I was saying, like this has really nice featurettes. Like I love that. I think maybe all of these have the soundtracks to them, which is really fun. And this looks great. Again, this was from the early 70s, so this was 75. And just like Almost Human, it looks fantastic looking. This one looks even a little bit better than Almost Human. Like just a stellar presentation, not pristine. You do have a slight little bit of wear and tear, but honestly, like it's such a nice looking presentation, like, and sounding. Severin always really comes to play with their restorations. Like they're not always perfect, but I know that there's going to be a level of quality there. So they did not disappoint.
Great. Yeah. That one sounds a little bit more my speed. So I don't know. We'll see how the rest of the box set goes to see if I need to put in my pre-order or not. Going into my final title, this was a movie that I had heard about from a few years ago. I'm almost positive this was a Redbox exclusive, but this is now out in a special edition Blu-ray from Ronin Flicks. This is Becky, which, like, if you don't know this movie, you will never believe who the villain
I think
is.
it's got Paul Blart in it, right?
Yes, Kevin James is the villain. He's playing a Nazi. It was so that's him up here, like shaved head, big beard. So that I was not expecting that. But so yeah, it has Kevin James. Lulu Wilson is the main character, and then you also have Joel McHale here as her dad. So I'll just show this off a little bit. So I really like this disc art. It goes along with like the cover of the opening credits, and then you also have this alternate cover art here that kind of shows her and her little get up. So this kind of that kind of gives it more. There is kind of like a lighthearted, kind of like over exaggerated fantasy feel, but it's not like a fantasy movie by any means. It's like a pretty brutal home invasion thriller was what it boils down to. So Lulu Wilson plays Becky, she has lost her mom in recent years. Her and her dad are like going back home after school. She's been taken out of school one day, and they're kind of having their like own contentious moment. His new girlfriend shows up with her son, who is actually like, this blew my mind, is played by the lead of Ashgrove, Amanda Brugel. So I was like, oh, two in one, like within the span of a couple of days. So to see her show up was pretty fun. But shortly after, Paul Blart himself, Kevin James, and like his band of people, he's escaped from prison and he's like out to go back to this house where he is like, I think previously hidden a very important key to him, and he's trying to get it, and like anyone who gets in his way will be dealt with, basically. So you see kind of his like maliciousness like on the way to this house, in spits and spurts. But then once you get there, Becky is not, because she is like had a spat with her dad. She's like kind of out in the woods when everyone comes into the house and invades the house. So she's kind of on the outside, and like her and her trusty dog are kind of like tasked with saving the family, if that's even possible. So this goes pretty much how you would expect it to, but it's a lot of fun. It's very, very brutal at times. It almost delights in the violence. Like there's stuff with like stuff going through. There's a lot of stuff with eyeballs in this one that are just like wild. There's some really dark humor too as well. There's one thing I really want to like talk about, but I don't want to give away a specific gory part, but it's really gnarly and fun. So a lot of great kills in this one, a lot of dark humor. I do want to note, I know a lot of people have issues with this. I will not say if it's her dog, because that would be a spoiler, but I would say there are animals that are harmed in this one. So if you have like a very like a lot of sensitivity to animals being harmed, I just want you to know that that does occur in this movie, and it is heartbreaking, but it happens. But I will say there is more than one animal in there, so that's not a spoiler. I'm not saying that her dog dies. I'm just saying an animal gets hurt. I really like Lulu Wilson. I'm mixing up with Kevin James. Lulu Wilson in the lead role. She's very charismatic. She's not like the annoying type of like young like performer who can sometimes be a bit cloying or like cutesy. Like she does a really solid job in her role. I had never really heard much about this movie. I just remember it had come out, so I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. It just has like a really fun energy to it that I really quite enjoyed. It kind of reminded me similar in tone, even though it's a little less like tongue in cheek, of like Tragedy Girls. If you've seen that, it has like a really good mixture of like dark horror and like humor. But this is a lot of fun, and this has like a lot of great special features. There's several different introductions you can choose to watch. From the creative figures, there's different interviews with the actors. There's a commentary track with Lulu Wilson and then the screenwriters. So overall, this is a really nice package, and I'm glad that this one, I believe it came out in 2020. I'm glad it came back onto my radar because it was a pretty like enjoyable, fun time. So Becky is now out on a special edition Blu-ray from Netflix.
Nice. That is also a movie that I've been kind of meaning to see, so that's maybe like a good way to sort of push myself into checking it out. So my final film, I just feel like we all should just get naked, and that has to do with my final title, which is from Kino Classics, and that is from their Forbidden Fruit series. This is volume 14. Now, weirdly, I don't think volume 13 is out yet. I think that was maybe like a little mix up. But hopefully I will be covering that. Because I am like caught up with all of these finally. But yeah, so I have to say, this is like a very specific kind of category of films, of like sexploitation films from like what people consider like the golden age of sexploitation, which is like the 50s and the 60s. and like there's like the nudist camp films. There's also like what they call like nudie cuties, which is another like subcategory. So I mention all this because if you are interested in stuff like that, there's a amazing documentary that I'll link in the description where you can find it, called That's Exploitation, from Frank Henenlotter. It's great. It's on Blu-ray. Yeah, so I have to say I'm not really big into like the nudist camp films. Like they have their own charm, and I know there is a group of film buffs that like devour all these. I mean, it does capture a very specific time, place, attitude. So as a historical point of like view, it's pretty interesting, but they're just kind of not for me. Like I mean, if you want to see naked people, you can just go online, right? Like it's pretty easy. And if you're hoping for male nudity, there isn't. You see like guys' butts, and that's the most of it. But yeah, this is just, it's basically an excuse for like a nudist camp. One of the staples of this is like women playing volleyball, which of course you can kind of guess why that's a selling point. But anyways, I'm going to go through these really quickly because they're all kind of about the same. So Nudist Life was produced by the legendary king of exploitation, George Weiss. He did movies like Chain Girls, and most famously Glenn or Glenda, which was the Ed Wood Jr. film. So this documentary is based on a book called Nudist Life, and they kind of use this like to kind of dress this up a little bit as like a historical documentary about like, they talk about like tribes and their view on nudism, and that's very cringy, of course, as you can imagine. And then they talk about like more modern times, and it gets into kind of a weird gender discussion, but it really feels like a school lecture, and it actually kind of takes 20 minutes to actually get to a nudist camp in this. So this is maybe one of my least favorite of the three. I do have a favorite though. There is one that I kind of liked and I think I would probably watch again. But the next one is 10 Days in a Nudist Camp. This is a lot less pretentious than Nudist Life. This is another look at a nudist camp. I think it's certainly the more interesting one because it feels more like an actual documentary and like a real look at these kind of nudist colonies and how they function. It does fall back into the normal tropes of these films, like naked volleyball, and the men are explicitly or inexplicably always kind of dressed or semi-dressed. So it's not really that daring, but I guess maybe it is for the time. So I guess this was what, 57. So my favorite one is Shangri-La, and that is it starts with a man and a gorilla playing cards.
Love it.
And yeah, so this movie is a documentary, but it has a narrative kind of framing device, which I think is interesting, and it's goofy as hell. It is very 60s. It is very campy. It's a lot of fun. George Weiss actually is the host of a beauty contest in this, so we get a double dose of the king of exploitation here. So I was a little bit disappointed, and I love Kino to death. We all love them. I wish this would have had some audio commentary tracks.
Yeah.
Because I know with their past Forbidden Fruit things, they've had like a wealth of really fantastic commentary tracks from like a lot of really great genre experts, a lot of them women, which I think this would have been really interesting to kind of get that sort of perspective. But we do this is not Bear, bones. So we do get some short films, which is nice. I do appreciate that we have like some extra supplemental material. Overall, these look really good. I will say that some of them are definitely rougher than others, but again, we're talking about really old films that probably were not taken care of very well, but they are preserved, and you do tell that they were like restored as much as they probably could have. So this is I had a fun time. These weren't very long. They're each about an hour. I think like the longest one is like 72 minutes. And that's unfortunately the one I kind of like the least. But oh my god, this is worth it for Shangri-La.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. So it's a fun set. It's kind of like I said, I think if you like the nudist films, the nudie cuties and stuff, you'll definitely like this. If you're kind of new to that genre, like I think you would definitely want to check out that sexploitation, to kind of see if that's something that you like kind of connect with or not. But I think it's a great set. I love that they keep producing this line of Blu-rays, so I can't be mad at that. So I feel like that's a hell of a movie to end on, but we're recording this on a Friday, so it's weekend. Everybody go do nudist stuff. So um I guess now is the time when I'll do the obligatory. Please give this video a like, comment, share, all that good stuff. That really helps these videos out. We do this weekly, so you want to subscribe to not miss any episodes. And as always, thanks for hanging out with us.